Let me, we have a question. We have a YouTube question. I don't know. Allison, is this available to everybody or should I read it?
No, go ahead and read it. It's from
Okay.
Joe Malone.
Okay, we have Joe Malone is asking on YouTube, and he says he has a question related to protest versus technical committee. If I serve on the protest committee, does that mean I can't be a part of the technical committee? I respond thusly. I will relay your inquiry in my humble opinion, that would be declared as a potential conflict. Generally, the technical committee is 1, jury 3, feel free to correct me. I would have a tendency to agree that there is a conflict there. Bill, would you agree with that, or how would you interpret that?
Rule 59 would apply here. If you have your rule book in front of you, you'll know that there is no Rule 59. Seriously, it isn't a problem to be on. It isn't a problem to be on both technical committee and protest committee, unless a protest came up which would require a question to the technical committee. In that case, the thing to do would be withdraw from the protest committee and act accordingly. Basically, yes, you can be on both committees, but remember, you wear 2 different hats, and make sure you know which hat you're wearing whenever you're dealing with anything. And as Allison initially pointed out, and as you said, Bill, absolutely, if it even thinks or smells that possibly it might be a conflict, declare it and let everybody decide, well, you know what, we think that is, we think that isn't, and don't get yourself into it. Remember, it's not impropriety that gets us in trouble, it's the appearance of impropriety that gets us in trouble.
Right. Well, it's hard enough to get people to serve on a protest committee without disqualifying those who could serve. So, but that's essentially, I think that's kind of where I was going, that if you are required to perform your role as technical committee, that there probably is a conflict, and it would be unwise for you to be a part of that. But these things, again, there is no rule that prohibits it. There are things that mention conflicts of interest. I'm not sure that is covered in it, but I'd actually have to look at the rule book to see that.
But listen, I've been in situations where I've been race committee, protest committee, and technical committee, wearing all those hats at the same time. You just got to make sure which one you're doing. So it happens.
Great. Anybody have anything else to add? Brian, you look like you have something you want to say. No? No? Yes, Brian, go ahead.
Okay.
You're here.
Yeah, Bill. I have a question for you, Bill. Like where we have a regatta, and just how we should deal with this. Where fleet racing, PHRF racing, and in that race we have say a couple of J22s or something there, and the rule is that the notice of race says you must have a motor on your boat. And so we have those guys that might not, I'm not sure what it is for the J22s, whether they have to carry their outboard or not. But we say that in the notice of race. Now, it's probably nobody's going to find out except maybe one of the guys in their division will rat on them because they know that, or they don't know, whatever it is. What's the process for that?
Well, I believe if it is required or not required, if it is required that you don't have the engine on board, or that you do have the engine on board.
You do have an engine on board.
Yeah, well, I would think the technical committee could protest them. I think it could be done easier, perhaps, to the extent that the handicapper or can come up and say, tap them on the shoulder and say, you're in violation here. If they absolutely refuse, then I think that would be a grounds for a protest, technical committee protest. Bill, you agree with that, or?
Yeah, it's a protest. It's a protestable item. They're not in compliance with the rules in that case.
Even though we superseded their class rule by saying that they have to do that.
Yeah, if you've updated your notice of race or your SIs to say you have to have this, that overrides a class rule, and now you have to put in the wording that says this modifies the class rule. But
Yeah.
if you put it there, then yep, it's just normal protest. It's got actually that has nothing to do with
Yeah.
handicapping.
Okay.
I
And I have one other query as well. I didn't want to spend time on earlier.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because we were
We didn't
trying
have
to move
questions
around.
earlier, so we have some time.
About inspection and safety rules and so on. And sorry, the dog in the background there, but some clubs or organizations may not do inspections or have things that we request that you have this and blah blah for insurance purposes, because that makes them gives them responsibility or culpability if there's some kind of accident or whatever. How do you deal with that?
You want to go first, Bill?
You want to start? You go ahead. You go ahead. Yes, Bill, you go ahead. I would think that it would fall into the technical committee, but you go ahead. You proceed. Bill?
Yeah, it would be a technical committee thing. The thing is, what you're inspecting, make sure that whatever you're inspecting is already documented as a requirement and a rule and what have you. And you don't want to get into things that are outside of PHRF LO rule. If you get into something that's a Coast Guard requirement for minimum safety stuff, or if your event has said that you're using the ORC rules, expectations, that's a certain category, just stick to whatever is defined in there. If it's got to be very, very objective. If you make it subjective, you say, well, I think that is, or I think that isn't, those decisions should not be being made. But if it is a clear, you comply, you don't comply, then I would stick to just those types of things, and nobody could really say, well, there was something wrong with the measurement and you guys took on liability. That's my way of feeling about it. However, Bill Topping, who is on the other side of the border, they're much more litigious.
The only thing
Is there a different mindset there?
well, I'm not sure there's a different mindset, but I'm with the technical committee and technical committee protests are still pretty rare. And I'm wondering whether this is just discussion, whether the technical committee is restricted to Perf Lake Ontario rules, or whether if you have in the notice of race a requirement for particular equipment, for instance, if you have an offshore type race and you're required to have a man overboard pole or something associated with that, whether the technical committee still would not be the entity to protest that.
The technical committee would be the person, but if our audience today, individual handicappers, if you're not comfortable saying, yes, I am comfortable inspecting a boat to comply with those rules, if you're not comfortable with it, don't take on that responsibility.
Right.
So stick to what we have. And the only thing that we have for today's audience is we are discussing PHRF LO rule, and we should be focusing only on things that are documented to the PHRF. If it's documented and it's on a piece of paper that you can put in front of somebody and say you comply, you don't comply, that is the best way to do it.
Right.
I brought in the hearing of ORC rules for different categories for offshore or what have you. I get that. My bad. But the reality of it is, once you bring those in, make sure that the people who are measuring to that are competent and well versed in those rules.
Sure. Well, I think it's okay for us here today to expand into some of the other questions.